This happened to me about 5 years ago. A very important detail to share is that I always kept a pistol in my car, because you just never know when you might absolutely need it. I was driving home from visiting family who lived several hours away from me. I decided to pull into a gas station because I just wanted to get a pack of cigarettes at the time. I was a pretty heavy smoker back then. It was broad daylight, but since this was in the middle of nowhere, business appeared to be dead and there wasn't a single other customer there. The only car present was the one parked on the side of the station, presumably belonging to the clerk at the desk. As I approached the door, I noticed an old homeless man leaning on the corner of the store. Something about him just made me feel uncomfortable, so I made sure to stay sharp. I'm at the counter getting smokes, and the lady working then tells me, "Hey, keep an eye on that guy out there. He's been acting really strange and sketchy all day." I thank her for the heads up and walk out the door. I come out and the man is now leaning on the driver's side door of my car. At this point, I really don't have the patience to calmly ask him to move. So I decide to look at him and then yell, "Dude, get the hell away from my car." The man just stares at me and doesn't say anything. I then think to myself, okay, fine, I'll make this idiot move. I walk up to the passenger door, open it, and then lean in it, and then right from behind me, I then hear, "Give me your wallet." I quickly reach into my glove box, grab my pistol, turn around, and then point it directly to his head, all within a split second. The man backs up and I look down, and I then notice he's holding a kitchen knife in his hand. The clerk then comes outside and calls the police. The man takes off running into the woods behind the store. To this day, I always wonder what would have happened to me if I didn't have that gun on me. This happened approximately 3 years ago. I was 22 or 23 years old at the time. For an introvert much like myself, meeting someone in real life was not really a possibility for me, so I resorted to online dating. Plenty of fish to be exact. I got a few responses to my profile, and most of which consisted of, "What are you doing tonight? Want to meet up?" etc. Until I then received a message that was almost a paragraph in length. I tended to reply to those that wrote more than just one sentence. This guy's name was Paul. Paul and I talked for maybe about a month or two, then I slowly stopped replying. He was the kind of person that would always respond to you in novels. I could simply ask what his plans for the summer were, and I would always have to read through a ton of useless fluff to find the actual answer to my question. After a while, it just got really old, so I just stopped replying. Well, a week or so after I did that, he found me on Instagram. I didn't really think much of it at the time other than, well, I'm not talking to you. And he began messaging me on there, to which I held my response from him for a few more weeks. In the course of 3 weeks, he reached out to me via Plenty of Fish and Instagram probably about 10 to 15 times, and also checking my profile daily. A couple of more days pass, and I receive a friend request on Facebook. It was from Paul. Now, I have the most Caucasian name, comparable to Jane Smith, so I have no idea how he found me. I thankfully am a very cautious person, especially about the information that I share on my profile. The doctor that I worked for at the time, well, her practice wasn't searchable on Google yet, so it's absolutely bone-chilling to this day how he found me. Anyways, I was the only tech on duty at the time, and this tall gangly man then walks in. I ask him if he's there for an appointment, and he actually ended up clenching his fists and then slammed them on my desk, then saying, "No, my name is Paul." While he's grinding his fists into my desk, he then mutters, "And I'm here to talk to you." My entire body went limp. The air in my chest then escaped and all of the color was totally drained from my body. I told him he needs to leave immediately and how inappropriate it was for him to come to my work like that. He changed his attitude of intimidation to a more remorseful demeanor, and begged me to message him because he really wanted to talk. I told him I'd message him after work, and he left. I ended up messaging him a barrage of questions, like how did you find me at work, what were you doing there, etc. He told me that he was really sorry that he came to my place of business, but informed me that his intentions weren't ill. I kept hounding him on how he found me. He said that he went to my Facebook and saw that I worked for a doctor. He had been having some physiological issues lately, and he wanted to see someone. So I guess he decided to take the name of my doctor and boss and then typed it into Google, got the address, and then drove down. The only confliction was that I worked for an optometrist, which, if you type her name into Google, it pops up that she's an OD, not MD. I'd also like to add that the office is inside of an optical shop, and he actually passed through countless eyeglass frames, and he also didn't seem to get why his story was so bogus to me when I pointed out the inconsistencies. I ended up telling him just to please leave me alone. He eventually replied in an apologetic tone and stopped messaging me. Well, for about an hour. He then sent me more messages saying how he's always made out to be the bad guy and how I need to get my head out of my butt and it's no wonder that I'm single. I decided to block him after that, and I didn't hear from him for about 5 months. Then he actually had the audacity to message me on the new year and ask if I'd give him another shot. Yeah, right. So I'd like to start out by saying that this happened when I was 15. I'm now a 33-year-old mother of 2. When I was a kid, we moved around a lot, and one of the places we lived was a small country town of about 1,800 people in the bottom of the state of Tasmania, right at the bottom of Australia. When I was 15 years old, we had an elderly neighbor in his late 60s. Let's call him John. Well, John had befriended my mom and stepdad, and confided in them that his family lived on the mainland, and he had just been diagnosed with cancer. So he didn't really have anyone. Despite this diagnosis, he was a fairly fit and strong-looking older man who was about 6'2" or taller with white hair and a white-looking thick mustache. My parents felt sorry for him and they used to invite him over for dinner, and they would always check on him and make sure he was doing okay. He became a pretty regular part of our lives, always chatting to me and my younger sister and coming over to our house pretty regularly. Well, one time my mom and stepdad went over to his place and they had a few glasses of wine. Even though my mom wasn't really a big drinker and probably didn't have much of a tolerance, she later said that she felt like she was extremely drunk and spaced out, but just brushed it off to thinking she drank too much. One day close to Christmas, he approached my mom and he asked her if he could take me out shopping to pick out some presents for his granddaughter, who apparently was around the same age as me. My mom asked if I was okay with it, and I said yes because I just really wanted to help out this old man. So the day arrived and he picked me up in his white van. Stereotypical, I know. And I told my mom that we'd be back in several hours because the drive would take a pretty long time to get to the shops from where we lived in the country. He ended up taking me to the markets, and I pointed out some gifts that I really thought that his granddaughters would probably like. I didn't really think anything of it at the time, but he never bought any of the stuff that I suggested, but absolutely insisted on buying me a gift for all of my help in order to show his appreciation. Well, after refusing, I finally gave in and chose a top. On the drive home, he started saying I should try on the top to see how it looks. I felt really uncomfortable, as it was just me sitting in the front seat of the van with him all alone, and he was trying to tell me to just quickly swap shirts. I kept politely refusing, saying that I'd wait till I got home, but he absolutely insisted, and then he pulled the van off on the side of the road and said that he'd get out and look the other way while I changed. Wanting this entire ordeal to just be over, I just quickly swapped tops and then he showered me in compliments and continued driving. Obviously by this point, I was feeling pretty uncomfortable. And when he suggested that we get something to eat, I felt like he was stalling, trying to drag out the time that we had left together on the drive home. I finally gave in and said that I'd eat some lunch, thinking that he would just grab drive-thru or something, but no. Instead, he took me to a semi-fancy restaurant and ordered a fancy lunch for us, along with a bottle of wine. I might like to point out at this time that even though I was 15 years old, I looked a lot older, and people always thought that I looked around 18 or 20. And I'd also like to add that the legal drinking age in Australia is 18. So yeah, the waitress didn't really have an issue bringing us out a bottle of wine. Now, the next part of this story is so stupid on my behalf. So he kept on topping up my glass, and before I knew it, I pretty much drank the entire bottle of wine during that lunch. I guess I was just a stupid, naive teenager who thought it was cool that I was being allowed to drink alcohol. Anyways, after lunch was over, we headed back home, and he kept making comments like, "You have bedroom eyes." Which at the time, I had no idea what the hell he was going on about. And as we pulled into our street, he slowed down the van and then said to me, "You know, your mom will probably be pretty mad at you for drinking alcohol. You should just come inside and freshen up." Now, even though I was drunk, all of my instincts were telling me not to let myself be alone in that house with this creepy man. I told him no, it's okay. I'll act sober and I'll just go straight to my room. John kept insisting, and he pulled into his driveway. I opened the door, and he then grabbed my wrist, telling me how much trouble I'll be in because I was drunk, and he really thinks that I should just come inside with them. I twisted my wrist and got out of his grip, and then jumped out of the van while it was still slowly driving. I ran away from both his house and mine towards my friend's house, who also lived on the same street as me. I knew her parents were pretty chill, and when her mom opened the door, I told her that I drunk some alcohol, hence I needed to sober up before I went home, or that my mom would kill me. She let me sit in her lounge room and gave me water and coffee until I sobered up enough to walk home. I wasn't really sober, but sober enough to walk. I also pretended to be sober once I got home. I didn't tell my mom because I was honestly just so scared about getting in trouble, which seems so stupid now knowing that he was the one who would have gotten in trouble. Anyway, John stopped coming over as much, which I was glad about, and he started giving my parents the cold shoulder, and they didn't know why. Then a few weeks later, I arrived at work where I had a part-time job at a hairdresser sweeping floors. And my manager at the time, who was awesome, privately showed me this long handwritten note that she'd found slipped under the door when she opened up. This is what the note said. "You have an employee here who sleeps with her clients' husbands and is a liar and a slut, and all sorts of other bullcrap." It also mentioned at the end of the note that the girl that they were talking about had long black hair, and I was the only one who worked there who had long black hair. And most of the women there were a lot older than me. My manager and I were quite close, and I'd even confirmed to her when I'd had my first kiss with a boy that I had a crush on a few months earlier. I mean, I was still a freaking virgin. And this letter was from some apparently crazy woman that was accusing me of sleeping with her husband and other clients' husbands as well. I mean, what the hell? I took the letters home and showed them to my mom, who was also outraged as well. We couldn't really think of who would do this though. Not long after that happened, my mom and I were in the car, and our neighbor John followed us for about a half an hour. By this stage, my mom had picked up on a few weird things that John was doing, like snobbing her and my stepdad. So she was on alert when he followed us for such a huge length of time. Another time, my mom and I came out from buying groceries, and my mom saw that the paint on our car was bubbling and sizzling, like some kind of acid had just been poured all over it. She took it to the car garage across the road, and he said that it smelled like brake fluid or battery acid had just been deliberately poured all over her car. There was also another time where I came home from school, and there was some kind of animal remains on our front step as if it was put there on purpose. I'd also like to add that the day before, my beloved pet bunny had just mysteriously disappeared. Anyways, not long after this happened, my friend's mom and dad came over to chat with my parents. Apparently John had been going down at the local bakery and harassing all of the young girls working there, including one of my friends who was also 15. I ended up confessing what really happened on the day that he took me Christmas shopping. Both sets of the parents were absolutely shocked and horrified. A few days later, my mom had told the one and only policeman who lived in the town, and because he was friends with my family, he actually looked up this guy and dropped a huge bombshell on us. He told us that John had been in trouble all over Australia for flashing people. His 2 daughters had both filed restraining orders against him, and apparently he had been charged with beating one of his daughters up so bad that he'd put her in the hospital. And apparently he also had been run out of several towns of similar creepy behavior, and I think he had some sort of outstanding charges on him. And you're not even gonna believe what else happened. But wait, the story isn't over quite yet. The police ended up going and searching his house and found a few illegal shotguns, which he wasn't even allowed to have. And the most absolutely creepiest thing for me was that he had a tripod video recorder pointed directly through his curtains right into my room. The policeman also told us that they didn't find any evidence that he was sick and had most likely faked the entire cancer story to groom my parents into trusting him, all so that he could weasel his way into our lives. Luckily for me, not too long after this happened, we moved out of state. And to tie this story up, a couple of years later, my mom had told me that my stepdad had gone and pissed in his water tank just right before we moved. So yeah, I really hope he enjoyed drinking that water. I never did find out the outcome of what happened to him, but I really hope he got locked up for whatever they found in his house. He truly deserves it. I was 19 years old at the time of this story. I was living in Littleton, Colorado at the time. For the short amount of time that I lived there, I had many crazy situations happen to me. For now, I'll tell you about one in particular. It'll probably help to know what I look like so you can better understand why this may have happened to me in the first place. Like I said, I was 19 years old at the time. I stood at about 5'7" and 130 pounds, had wildly colored hair, bright red, several facial piercings, and arm and chest tattoos. It was a warm day, so I was wearing weather comfortable clothes, shorts and a tank top, along with a pair of flip-flops and a sun hat. Because of previous situations that I found myself in, I had stopped taking late night walks. Instead, I went late afternoon. I had let my boyfriend take my truck to work because I didn't have to work that day and I didn't have any plans. But I wanted to surprise him at work and take him out to dinner after he got off, so I started walking up to Broadway towards Colfax. Now, if you've ever lived in Denver or been there for any amount of time, people will generally warn you about Colfax Avenue. It's busy and some sketchy wildlife live there and typically stalk that street. But for some reason, my oh-so-awesome roommates didn't warn this little white girl of the many horrors that could await you on Colfax Avenue. Okay, maybe a bit dramatic, but my experience was not pleasant at all. Back to the story. I turned from Broadway onto Colfax. As soon as I turned, it was like stepping into a whole nother world. There was a bus stop and it was bumping. Also, I'm pretty sure that I saw a guy taking bumps pressed up against the nearest building. Several homeless people were laying and sitting in various places up the street. 2 obviously lesbian girls were screaming at each other about something I really didn't care to gather. I walked quickly for about 2 or 3 blocks with my heart in my throat. I'm not really cut out for this sort of social interaction. I accidentally made eye contact with a dirty man lurking in an alleyway. Quickly, I looked down at my flip-flops and continued walking on. After a few blocks, the crowd thinned out a bit and I was feeling less frazzled. I was actually starting to enjoy my walk, but then I noticed this van. It was parked on a side street and trying to look inconspicuous because I could see that the driver slid down in his seat a little bit. I couldn't make out the details, but I could see that it was an older male with a dark complexion and dark short hair. Trying not to stare for too long, I committed this creeper van to my memory. It was a white van with blacked out windows, no company markings, and no front license plate. Red flags are totally going off in my head, but I just push away the feeling. I walk another block or two, and again, I see this van on a side street. It's moved up a couple of blocks as well. I start to get a nervous chill, though I just try to press on, just trying not to look scared. After another couple of blocks, I yet again see this van. I don't know where I think this is heading, so I stand my ground and face this van, staring into this man's face and waiting for a reaction to me noticing him. To my absolute horror, he gets out of the van, then slamming the door behind him. He's a small Spanish man, maybe about 5'4" and 150-ish pounds. He's shorter than me, but he's definitely bigger. My mind starts racing as he then starts running across the road towards me. I'm frozen. I wasn't expecting this. As soon as he reaches me, he then starts speaking in broken English. For the most part, I could understand him. He starts to compliment my hair, my piercings, freckles, and my butt. Joy. Awkwardly, I thank him, now confused. What does he want from me? Why is he so brave? Then he asks me for sex. I nearly choke and I ask him to repeat himself. Not really sure if I was hearing him correctly, but I was. He pulled out his wallet and offered me $200 to have sex with him. I take a large step back as he grabs my butt and then starts licking his lips. I start harshly telling him that I'm not that kind of girl and he's barking up the wrong tree. I then turn and speed walk away from this nasty man, starting to panic as I try to think of a plan on what to do. The man is following me now, waving the $200 around like it could convince me to go back. The first door that I see, I then run to and yank it open. I throw myself in at Mach speed and then bounce off the bouncer. I fall on my butt with a yelp. The bouncer helps me get up and he then asks me why I'm in such a hurry. I'm a bit too flustered to make any sense at the moment, and he's asking for my ID. I look around to realize I'm in a pub. I tell him on the verge of tears that I'm only 19 years old and that I'm trying to hide from the creepy man who's following me outside. I'm practically having a panic attack as the bouncer guides me to the bar and then fetches me a glass of water. The bouncer wants a description of the man, and I give it to him. He tells me to hang tight and then he disappears out the door. After a few long minutes, he returns and he tells me the man won't be a problem for me anymore. Reasonably, I'm still pretty scared. The bouncer asks me where I'm heading, and I check my GPS on my phone. I'm only about 2 blocks away from my boyfriend's work. The bouncer clocks out on his break, and he offers to walk me the 2 remaining blocks. I latch onto the man's arm, thanking him repeatedly. He pats my hand and just kinda laughs, telling me to keep off Colfax moving forward, which I totally promised I would. When we walked into my boyfriend's work, he kinda gave me a quizzical look, like he didn't really know what was going on. I then explained everything that happened to my boyfriend, and he just laughed at me. Perhaps I deserved that, but no one warned me. I didn't take my boyfriend to dinner that night, and I never walked on that street alone ever again. That creepy creeper in the creeper van. I just really hope I don't encounter anyone like that again. That truly was one of the creepiest things to have ever happened to me. Thank God for that bouncer. For some backstory, I'm a female, 18 years old now, and I was 13 when this encounter occurred. This might be kind of long, but bear with me. I promise it gets good. This encounter happened around 2013, and I was a part of this girls-only group. We'd meet up every week and just hang out and do teenage things. There were different locations around my city, and I obviously went to the one closest to me. It was about a 10-minute drive from my house. The building where we met was a massive local park near a lake, which made for plenty of fun times. The group was for girls aged around 13 to 17, so we generally all got along really well. This particular group that I was in met on Thursday nights, and there was about 9 of us. 2 were my family friends who were also my lifelong best friends. Them and 2 other girls and I went to the same school. There was this camp every year. The goal was to do everything yourself. So we had to set up our own campsite, make all our dinners, etc. And it was really fun. I'd been about 2 times previously. It's a competition, and our group would split into 2. Me, Aaron, Izzy, and Jess. The other 5 girls were in another group. One of the things that we had to do to prepare was to go shopping for food. So we did that one night, and we spent the other few nights packing everything we would need, like tents, portable stove, stuff for the fire, etc. My friend Aaron and I were in the same class at school, so the Friday afternoon of the camp, we left early and her mom picked us up. We live in the same street, so we got our things and carpooled there with the other girls, Izzy and Jess. The park where all of the camps were was massive. We actually stopped for pizza along the way. The first few nights of the camp went well. We stayed up all night eating candy in our tent, sneaking out and walking around the massive park, talking, playing truth or dare, and never have I ever. You know, normal teenage girl kind of things. On the last full day, we did an activity that we chose prior to going to the camp. Out of all the girls in my group, I was the only one who had chosen to do archery. And I only knew 2 other girls from my main group, and I got to know some of the girls that I didn't really know from the other groups. During the activity, the leaders started acting really weird. They were kind of just looking at each other and whispering and talking on their walkie-talkies. The girls that I knew from our group back at home who weren't in my group at the camp were doing archery too. So I hung around with them and we were all discussing why we thought the leaders were acting so weird. The leaders seemed to get more scared every minute, and they called us over and told us to go into one of the buildings because we were going on lockdown. I stuck with all of the girls, and we and some of the other activity groups went inside. Everyone else from the other activity groups went to the building on the other side of the park, including the girls from my group at this camp. We hung out there chatting to everyone for maybe an hour, and we all talked about the camp so far and what we thought was going on. This one girl named Chloe said that a girl had seen a naked man with a knife walking around in the woods. And there was also another girl named Monique who said that there was a gang in the woods who knew of this girls' camp and wanted to find someone to snatch. Either way, we were all totally freaked out. Then they offered bathroom breaks. We went in groups of 4 outside to the bathrooms, and then 2 leaders escorted us. There happened to be 2 cop cars outside, and I just felt really uneasy. We started to talk with one another, but the leaders led us to the bathrooms and told us to be quiet. When we got into the bathroom, they then explained everything. There was a girl who was named Piper, and she had actually spotted a naked man holding a knife. So Chloe was correct. They told us it was all going to be okay and that the cops were searching for him. They called everyone's parents and the police finished the search. When this was done, one of the cops came into our building and said that they'd got the guy and we were all safe. We were finally let back into our campsites. When I got to see my friends from the other building back at the tent, I gave them a massive hug and they asked if I was okay, and I asked them the same. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but the girl who saw the man, Piper, she went home and was obviously traumatized. We were supposed to cook our own dinners that night on the fire, but to celebrate, the leaders ordered a crap ton of pizza, soda, and fries for us to just have a massive feast together. We were all scared as crap that night, and we didn't sneak out of our tent like we had the other nights, because even though the guy had been arrested, we were still totally creeped out. The following year, there was this girl in my class named Hannah. I actually found out that she was part of the same girls' club that I was, but from another location in my city. I slightly recognized her after she told me this. I brought up the incident that happened at camp from the previous year, and she was at the camp too. She was actually part of the orienteering group that saw the guy. She told me that he indeed was naked and did have a knife. I'm guessing he was on something, but it was still creepy as hell. Back in October 2015, I had just left a meetup with some new people from meetup.com. It's late, maybe after 11 p.m., so it's well into nighttime. I'm in an unfamiliar downtown area, and I'm having some trouble finding the parking structure that I left my vehicle in. It's a cold night, and as I'm wandering around the streets, I notice that there aren't a lot of people around. I start to feel a little concerned as more time goes by, and I don't know where I am. I feel a wave of relief when I see what looks like my parking structure a few blocks down. Well, that relief is very short-lived and is quickly replaced with sheer terror. As I'm walking toward the structure, I see about 3 men about 50 feet or so away across the opposite side of the street and set foot on the sidewalk that I'm on. Right away, I start to get an uneasy feeling about them. 2 of them are wearing hoodie sweatshirts with the hoods over their heads, and the third one is wearing a black windbreaker with his hands in the side pockets. They look like trouble, but I need to get to my car, so I figure I'm just being too judgmental and keep walking. But after a few seconds, their conversation quiets down and they then take notice of me. They slow down a bit and I see them exchange glances with each other. One of them looks back at me and I see his head then nod upward, as if he's directing everyone's attention to me. My heart starts pounding, and I hear them all laugh and then start walking towards me yet again. They're all looking right at me. I have to think fast. I want to run, but I'm afraid they'll follow me. Then a sudden idea hits me. I grab my phone and I start pretending that I got a phone call. "Hello?" I say into the phone. "Wait, what? Oh crap!" I put a panicked look on my face and I pat my jacket pocket, pretending that I've lost my wallet. "Yeah, man, you're right. It is gone. You're still at Buffalo Wild Wings, right? Yeah, I'll be right there. Hold on to it for me." Of course, I'm not actually headed to the nearby Buffalo Wild Wings. I hadn't even gone there that night. It was just a ruse to misdirect them. I turn around and start quickly walking away. I hear the guys behind me mutter some words to themselves, but I can't really understand exactly what they're saying, nor do I really care. Their footsteps get louder, sending me into full panic mode. I've now reached the corner and I'm about to start running when I get a horrific chill through my chest as I then hear one of them shout in an angry, sinister tone.
"Hey, wait up, buddy!"
As soon as I round the corner and move behind the nearby building and out of their sight, I then run faster than I've ever run my entire life down that sidewalk. I have no idea where I'm going, but I have to get away from those hoodlums. I can hear their footsteps behind me as they give chase, but I'm running way too fast and I'm way too ahead of them. So there's absolutely no way they're catching me. Their footsteps fade after about 10 seconds or so, and after about a minute or so of running, I stop to catch my breath. Thankfully for me, I've run to the busier section of town where there's a few people still walking around. I stand at the entrance of a nearby pub that's actually still open, keeping my eye out just in case those guys decide to show back up. After about 10 minutes, there's no sign of them, so I decide to head back. I walk quickly, constantly looking in all directions, but I make it back without incident. My heart is still pounding when I make it back to my car. It isn't until I've left the city and make it onto the freeway back home that I finally feel safe. I have no idea who those guys were or what they intended to do to me when they caught up with me. And to anyone listening to this, I offer 2 pieces of advice. Always be aware of your surroundings and make sure you know exactly where to go if you're in an unfamiliar place, especially if you're alone. Stay away from bad parts of town. If a person or a group of people look suspicious and you don't feel safe around them, leave the situation as quickly as you can whenever possible. You don't owe dangerous strangers any explanation or benefit of the doubt. Please stay safe, everyone.